friends, I'm excited to share another process video with you, this time of a book cover. This is one of my favorite young adult fiction books. It's called Trickster's Choice by Tamora Pierce, and as I'm sketching the concept here in Procreate, I'm trying to keep several things in mind. 1. How can I convey the setting, story, and personality of the main character? 2. Am I leaving enough room for the title and the author name? And 3. How can I make sure this book stands out in a library or bookstore? The story is about a mischievous young spy named Ollie, who's working to bring down a royal family. So I drew the background elements as majestic, symmetrical, and formal, to show the might of the kingdom, while the main character is messy, dirty, and lounging on the throne. Together, these clashing elements can help pique the interest of potential readers, making them wonder what's going on in the story. So once I've finalized the drawing, printed it, and traced it onto hot press watercolor paper, I can start painting. I've talked about my process in my last illustration video, so I don't want to be too repetitive. If you have any specific questions or any parts you'd like to see in more detail, let me know in the comments. I never really know what would be helpful, so I just try to show what I'd like to see. Here I'm using a large watercolor brush that comes to a very fine point. This brush shape helps me paint both large areas and small details, because the brush is big enough to hold a lot of paint without drying out, while the tip is small enough that I can paint around very small shapes. If you look to the left of the screen, you'll see the edge of a book peeking in. It's called Becoming a Good Creature, and it's illustrated by Rebecca Green. She is absolutely one of my style heroes, and this is one of many books and images I have scattered around my desk for inspiration while I paint. I highly recommend checking out her illustration blog. It's at myblankpaper.com. So, as usual, I'm remixing my colors quite a bit as I work. I don't like to have any flat, even areas in a painting, so as I go I add a little more green to my mixture there, a little red here, and that gives me the kind of textural, energetic look I'm going for. I realized I very rarely paint shadows or highlights, what a lot of artists might call rendering. If I do, they're pretty graphic and kind of unrealistic, with hard edges and no blending. I find that if I start blending, rendering, or making my scenes look too three-dimensional, they kind of lose their spark for me. I often think of my paintings as if they were paper cutouts. I create a scene with clean, graphic shapes, differing colors, and the occasional highlight here and there, instead of with blending, shadows, and accurate perspective. Other artists that have a similar style are Felicita Sala, Yas Imamura, and Sarda. Definitely check them all out, and I hope I pronounced their names right. One of the great things about the material I'm using, acrylic gouache, is how opaque it is. This means that if you make a mistake or want to add or remove something from your illustration, it's really easy to cover up the painting below it. I tried working with watercolor for years, and sometimes I still use it, but I find that I get too nervous working with mediums like that, where any mistake you make is there to stay. As you can see, I make plenty of mistakes in this piece. I ended up painting over the rope tassels, changing the height of the floor, and I tried a bunch of different colors on a lot of areas. So unfortunately, there's a whole chunk of footage missing here. I must not have realized I wasn't recording, but yeah, we're gonna skip a lot of painting Ollie and jump right in on adding some of the details, outlines, and finishing touches. Alright, so as always, I take my finished paintings into Photoshop for some digital edits. Here's the traditional painting, and here's the final edited version. It got so much better in my opinion. I did things like editing the greens and blues to warm them up, changing the color of individual elements, adding back in those rope tassels, and changing Ollie's expression to make her a little more relaxed and careless. Alright, so with the illustration finished, it's time to move on to the title. I experimented with a ton of designs before I landed on this one. It's a combination of an existing font and some hand lettering, all of which I printed out and redrew, so it would be a little wonky and imperfect to fit with the tone of the illustration. As you can see, I tried a bunch of different title designs, but here's the finished title and the finished cover. Thanks so much for watching, and please stay safe out there and keep making art.